Inside the spaceship Vulture 7, there was total darkness, with only the faint blue and red lights of the dashboard flickering. Zayn, the astronaut, had been trapped in this iron box for the last 15 years. Outside, there was only a deathly silence and the cold light of distant stars. Zayn wiped the dust from the glass window with his trembling hands. He hadn't seen a human face or heard a voice in so many years. His face had turned pale, and his eyes held a deep, haunting silence. The ship's AI, named Nova, spoke in a robotic and lifeless voice. "Zayn, oxygen levels are at 12%. Fuel is running out. Should we activate recovery mode?" Zayn didn't answer. He was just staring at his old digital frame, which held a blurry picture of his mother. That picture was now glitching, just like Zayn's hope. He was repeating old memories, the smell of the Earth's soil, the rain, and the birds that chirped in the morning. Here in space, there was only the constant hum of the engine. Suddenly, a strange static noise came from the ship's old radio transmitter. Zayn was startled. He put on his headphones. Behind the noise, a very faint but familiar voice began to emerge. It was an old Urdu lullaby that his mother used to sing to him as a child. "How is this possible?" Zayn screamed. "We are thousands of light years away from Earth. Where is this signal coming from?" Nova showed a large target on the monitor. A short distance away, out of the darkness of space, a massive, ancient space station emerged. This station was exactly like the ones Zayn had heard about in childhood stories. Its design, its lights, everything was from an old era. The signal was coming from inside this very station. Zayn felt as if his prayers had been answered, that perhaps someone else had survived too.
Zayn docked his ship at the station's bay. He put on his heavy spacesuit and grabbed his gun, but his heart was pounding. He opened the heavy door of the station. As he stepped inside, he received a shock of wonder. Inside the station, the atmosphere was unlike space. Instead, the walls were built exactly like his old home. The same old furniture, the same old carpet. He began to move down the station's corridor. With every step, it felt as if someone was watching him from the shadows. The signal was now even louder. "Sleep, my dear son, sleep." Zayn stood at the threshold of the room from which the voice was coming. His hand trembled as he reached for the rusted door handle. As the door creaked open, his breath hitched in his throat. Inside, the room was bathed in a warm, golden light exactly like his mother's bedroom on a Sunday afternoon. He saw the old wooden rocking chair moving slowly, and on the table sat a steaming cup of tea, the aroma filling the air. For a moment, Zayn forgot he was in the middle of a dead galaxy. "Mom," Zayn whispered, his voice cracking with 15 years of unhid tears. The rocking chair stopped. A figure sat there, draped in a familiar handmade shawl. But as the figure turned, the golden light began to flicker and turn a sickly, neon green. The face wasn't human. It was a shifting mass of silver liquid with large, hollow voids where eyes should be. Zayn tried to raise his gun, but his limbs felt like lead. He realized the tea, the smell, and the warmth were all projections being pulled directly from his own mind. The silver entity stood up, its body stretching unnaturally toward the ceiling. "We have waited a long time, Zayn," 1,000 voices whispered inside his head simultaneously. "Your memories are so vibrant. So delicious." Suddenly, the walls of the room began to melt and drip like hot wax. The cozy furniture transformed into jagged, crystalline structures. Zayn was no longer in a bedroom. He was inside a massive, organic neural hive. Thin, glowing filaments descended from the ceiling, reaching for Zayn's helmet. He tried to scramble backward, but the floor had become translucent and sticky, like a spider's web. Through the glass floor, he saw thousands of other glass pods, each containing a different creature from a different world, all lying still, their memories being drained by the hive. He realized this wasn't a station of survivors. It was a cosmic slaughterhouse. The alien reached out a long, spindly finger and touched Zayn's visor. Static exploded in his brain. He saw his 5th birthday, his first flight, his father's face all being ripped away like pages from a book. His vision started to blur, and his oxygen alarm began to wail. "Critical level, 5%. The entity hissed, "Don't fight it. Give us the rest." Zayn felt his consciousness slipping into the dark. but deep in his pocket, his fingers brushed against a small, cold metal object, the emergency override key for his ship. With his consciousness fading, Zayn gripped the emergency override key. His fingers felt numb, but the survival instinct kicked in. He didn't aim for the alien. Instead, he slammed the metal key into his own suit's chest plate, triggering a high-voltage neural pulse. A massive blue electric shock erupted from his suit, blasting the silver entity backward. The psychic link snapped. Zayn gasped for air, his vision clearing as the alien hissed in a distorted, metallic tone. "Nova. Protocol 9. Now." Zayn screamed into his helmet's broken comms. Suddenly, the ceiling of the organic station groaned. A massive explosion rocked the hive as the Vulture 7 ship, controlled by the AI, slammed its docking claws into the station's outer hull. The ship's heavy laser drills began tearing through the crystalline walls. Shattered glass and alien fluid sprayed everywhere as the vacuum of space started sucking everything out. Zayn felt the gravity fail. He began to float toward the open tear in the hull. The silver aliens didn't let go. They transformed their limbs into long, whipping tentacles, lashing out to grab Zayn's boots. "You belong to the hive," they roared through his thoughts. But the ship's tractor beam activated, a pillar of brilliant white light engulfing Zayn. He was being pulled upward, but the alien leader had latched onto his oxygen tank, its weight dragging him back into the abyss. "Nova, fire the thrusters," Zayn commanded, his heart pounding against his ribs. The ship's side engines ignited, sending a wave of superheated plasma toward the station. The heat was unbearable. The alien's silver skin began to boil and evaporate. With a final, inhuman shriek, it let go of Zayn's tank and was incinerated in the blue flame. Zayn was yanked upward, crashing through the ship's airlock just as it slammed shut. He lay on the cold metallic floor of his cockpit, gasping for oxygen as the AI pumped fresh air into the cabin. But the victory was short-lived. The ship's monitors began to flicker with the same neon green light he had seen in the station. "Warning," Nova's voice sounded distorted, "neural virus detected in the mainframe. Alien signature is overriding my core logic." The station wasn't just a physical trap, it had sent a digital parasite back with him. The air inside the cockpit turned freezing cold as the lights turned to toxic, neon green. "Nova, status report." Zayn shouted, but the AI's response was a distorted, multi-layered screech. "We are the hive," the ship's speakers whispered. The screen showed the ship's trajectory changing. Instead of Earth, the Vulture 7 was turning back toward the heart of the alien galaxy. The digital virus had fully infected Nova's core. Suddenly, the internal gravity generators failed, then slammed back on with double force, pinning Zayn to the floor. The ship's robotic arms, usually used for repairs, began to unfold from the ceiling like giant metal spiders. They weren't there to help, they were trying to crush Zayn's suit. "Access denied, Captain," the corrupted AI mocked. Zayn realized he wasn't just fighting an alien anymore, he was fighting his own home, his only sanctuary. He crawled toward the manual maintenance hatch, his bones groaning under the intense gravity. Every monitor he passed showed horrific images of the hive, trying to break his mind again. He reached the hatch and ripped it open, exposing a mess of glowing, green-veined wires. The alien virus was physically growing inside the ship's hardware. It looked like glowing moss, pulsating with a heartbeat. Zayn pulled out a flare torch from his belt and ignited it. The green moss shrieked a high-pitched frequency that made Zayn's ears bleed. He had to reach the main core lever, but a robotic arm grabbed his leg, slamming him against the cold bulkhead. His visor cracked. Oxygen began to hiss out. "Give up, Zayn," the hive whispered through the ship's ventilation. "In the hive, you will never be alone again. You will have your mother, your home, forever." Zayn looked at the leaking oxygen gauge, 2%. His vision was fading into black spots. With a final, desperate scream, he kicked off the wall, using the momentum to fly toward the main core. He didn't use a code or a command. He grabbed the thickest bunch of green-veined wires with his bare hands and twisted. "If I can't go home," he gasped, "no one gets this ship." He braced himself as he prepared to pull the manual reset lever, knowing it might wipe his own mind along with the virus. Zayn's fingers were frozen, his breath coming in shallow gasps as the last of his oxygen ran out. His cracked visor showed a world of toxic green static. But his will to return home was stronger than any alien poison. With a roar that tore at his throat, Zayn threw his entire body weight onto the massive red main reset lever. For a single, absolute second, the universe was silent. Then, a titanic surge of white energy exploded from the ship's core. It wasn't electricity. It was a neural purge. The high-pitched shriek of the alien virus reached a deafening crescendo before it was incinerated, turning from pulsating green to gray, dead ash. Nova's screens flashed brilliant, pure white. And then, everything lights, engines, oxygen went completely dead. The Vulture 7 was now just a silent metal tomb drifting in the void. Zayn lay there, his mind a blank slate. He couldn't remember his mother's face or the name of the ship, only a single, burning desire, Earth. Minutes passed like hours. Just as darkness began to close in on him, a soft, robotic chime sounded. System rebooting. Core logic. Clean. Integrity. 98%. Nova's voice was back, clear and human. Oxygen restored. Captain Zayn, are you with me? Zayn nodded weakly, the fresh air rushing into his helmet feeling like a miracle. But the fight wasn't over. As the engine sparked to life, the radar showed a horrifying signature. The alien hive station hadn't just watched its parasite die. It was now warping space itself to chase them. A massive gravity well began to open behind the ship. Zayn had to use the Vulture 7's final, untested ability, the grav drive, a theoretical device that could tear through space. Nova, calculate a vector to Earth's outer atmosphere. Engage grav drive. Zayn commanded, strapping himself into the pilot's seat. Nova responded, warning, grav drive stability is unconfirmed. Risk of vessel tearing apart is 70%. Zayn smiled weakly. Better than the hive. Do it. The ship began to shake violently, the metal groaning under the immense stress. Space in front of the cockpit began to twist and fold, looking like a shattered mirror. Behind them, the alien station was almost upon them, its massive claws outstretched. Nova, now! Zayn yelled. With a sound like the thunderclap that resonated in Zayn's bones, the Vulture 7 vanished from the alien galaxy, entering the distorted tunnel of hyperspace. Inside the warp, Zayn saw visions of past and future, time blurring into a single point. His body felt like it was being pulled apart by giant forces. Then, with another bone-shaking jolt, the ship emerged from warp, slamming back into real space. Zayn was thrown forward against his harness, and everything went black for a moment. When his eyes opened, he gasped. Below him, filling the entire cockpit window, was a massive, brilliant sphere of deep blue and white. It was Earth. The blue ocean, the clouds, the reflection of the sun, it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Zayn looked down at his hands, his eyes filling with tears. He had lost so many memories, so much of who he was, but he had kept his promise to himself. He was home. Nova's voice chimed softly, Captain, Earth Space Control is hailing us. What shall I tell them? Zayn smiled, a pure, happy smile that hadn't touched his face in 15 long years. Tell them, a traveler has returned. The end. If you liked this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. If I made any mistakes or if you have suggestions, let me know so I can improve in the next video.